Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of the Cinematropolis.com, your home to thoughtful conversations on film. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and today we're reviewing the most watched piece of marketing for Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. You could also say it's Disney's latest earnings call, the movie. That's right. Today we're reviewing Deadpool and Wolverine. We're going to start with an icebreaker question where we play a little catch up on how we feel about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's been a hot few minutes since we've talked about it on the Cinematic Schematic. And then we'll jump into a spoiler-free review where we will keep it very spoiler-free. It'll be probably a shorter review section than normal. We'll also render a verdict on whether you should see the film or not there. And then we'll conclude the show by going into an in-depth spoiler discussion. Joining me today, he's my co-host. He's an award-winning Oklahoma filmmaker. I haven't stabbed him recently. There has been no bloodshed yet, but we hear that that's what the fans want to see. Laron Chapman. Laron, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. I have questioned that myself. I was like, am I the Deadpool to your Wolverine, or am I the Wolverine to your Deadpool? You know, we'll let the viewers decide.
That'll be up for the listeners to decide, or the guests can tell us which one. I don't know.
I kind of formed my hair just like they might not.
They can't see it, but you do have a very large haired
bit of a dome there. It didn't quite do what I wanted.
Would fit perfectly in a mask that had wings on it.
Yes. And I myself do also, much like Deadpool, want to matter. So I'm also super excited to be rejoined. He is the GoodTrash Media co-founder, co-host of the GoodTrash Genre Cast. Also, I guess we should note, fellow X-Men fan and film critic, Arthur Gordon. Arthur, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here to talk about, I guess, the biggest movie of the year.
Yeah.
As of now. Yes.
Surprise.
Well, biggest opening weekend of the year. Me and Laron had some box office predictions on our first show of the year, and
this was not it.
This was not it. I will say, Inside Out 2 does still have the title of biggest animated film of all time, but Deadpool's coming in pretty strong, so we will see. Well, hey, it's always a pleasure to speak with fellow X-Men fan, Laron, big X-Men fan. We'll talk about it. Arthur, X-Men fan, and bringing in new first-time guest host. I hear she's an X-Men fan. Laron has told me so many wonderful things about her superhero knowledge. Jada Merritt, filmmaker here in Oklahoma. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Oh, that's so sweet, Laron.
Yeah.
I've got my chimichangas and my really obvious Jim Beam product placement ready to go.
I thought for sure I was MCU'd out, like over indexed for a while. Then they announced Hugh Jackman, and I was like, oh, I'm in. No matter what, I'm in. So to be able to talk about such a big moment in the superhero cinema history with you three is quite the pleasure. Now, listeners, if it's a pleasure for you to tune in to this conversation, reviewing in this important moment in cinematic superhero history, let us know by leaving us a rating and a review. If you enjoy the chimichangas, as Jada mentioned there, they are very tasty. Please let us know by leaving us a rating and a review on your preferred podcast app. That includes Apple and Spotify. I have a goal of 200 reviews on Apple Podcasts, with only sitting around 50. And I know there are a lot of people who are listening who haven't left a review yet. It takes 5 seconds, guys. You're not sure how to do it? Hit me up, thecinemetropolis@gmail.com. This is actually the first full episode we've dedicated to an MCU movie since we did Black Panther Wakanda Forever at the end of 2022. And we did talk a little bit about Antman and the Wasp Quantumania when we did I think there's 3 movies we were talking about one episode. And a lot has changed since then. And I thought, well, hey, you all know that me and Laron were kind of burned out on the MCU at the time, but maybe, it's been some time has passed. Maybe there have been new announcements. Maybe the break made us realize that we missed it, with there only being one Marvel Cinematic Universe release this year. So Laron Chapman, I'll turn to you first. How are you feeling about the state of the MCU?
Look, there's still some things down the pipeline that I'm going to be there opening night for. So
It's not going to be Blade.
It's definitely not going to be Blade. It's going to be Blade. So I mean, yes. I mean, if I was checking my pulse on it, it's like, look, this is an enterprise that I support. I love people's love of it. I understand the reverence for it. I just think that as I've gotten older, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like trying to find like fresh ways to present the material, because I feel like for a large swath of the most recent entries, you know, like we've kind of been like, it's kind of like we're just treading water here. It's like, what are we doing new? Where's the sense of discovery? Where's the excitement? You know, so I think that the film that we're about to talk about, tipping my hat a little bit, you know, it's kind of a nice jolt to the senses in terms of like what we can still do with this enterprise. And so I would say that I'm cautiously optimistic, you know, so yeah.
Okay. Laron's feeling cautiously optimistic. Jada, how about you?
I'm kind of the same way. I feel like the cinematic universe at this point is almost stumbling and trying to find its footing, if that makes any sense. There have been some, in my opinion, some really great stories that they've told and that they've put out. I personally really loved Wakanda Forever. I also loved Shang-Chi, despite however people feel about the third act of it. I think that was a really great entry into a character that not a lot of people have heard of.
Yeah.
And it's really obvious that people at Marvel really love these characters and they love showing them to the world. It's just kind of trying to, like Laron said, relight that spark that everyone's been looking for with Marvel. I feel like they're also trying to like make that happen with their like Disney Plus shows. I really love Loki. I'm not going to talk about the other ones. And then
Loki, the essential viewing before watching this movie.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, you're also cautiously optimistic, and I guess I should say have you watched all of the shows, most of the shows,
Yes,
all
yeah.
of them?
I have my opinions on it, but I will watch it because they have me by the throat.
and Arthur, before I jump to you, just went Laron, how much so you've watched all the movies? I'm positive.
Yes, I've watched all the films.
Have you watched any of the television shows?
I have watched WandaVision just because everyone wouldn't shut up about it.
That one's actually.
And then
good.
I watched it and I said, actually, this is good.
I know that you watched Werewolf by Night.
Yes,
I told you to watch it.
You told me to.
I told you to
and
watch it, and it's
I very much
That was
enjoyed that.
good.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that spoke to the creature feature horror film guy in me. So yes, you was spot on with that being appealing to me. So yeah. So
You know you so well.
you do,
You
but
rewatched
there's
that this Halloween. Huh.
but yeah, I don't think much beyond that I've seen. If people like go crazy for it and and people I trust tell me that you need to watch it. Because most of the time I'm like, I understand you love it, but will I love it is the question. And people who know me know if I will, so.
Arthur, how are you feeling about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and like the TV shows? Tell us a little bit about like how much of the stuff you've watched.
Okay. I think cautiously optimistic is probably fair. I don't think I fully swung pessimistic yet. Because like Laron said, there's things that I think even if I got super jaded, I will be there day one for some of the projects that are coming down the pipe, just because nostalgia or whatever. That's part of it. And just some of these characters I really do enjoy or love, or I want to see on the big screen, maybe represented in a way better than they have in the past or whatever. I think one of the things that's worked really well is that roster depth. It is seeing Shang-Chi. It is seeing Miss Marvel. It is seeing Kate Bishop come to life. And I think casting, I don't know that Marvel's ever really missed in that department. I think they find the perfect people almost every time. There may be a couple knocks, but I think that's really good. As far as TV shows, I've seen a few that first kind of run I was pretty invested in. I didn't catch all of the what ifs, but most of the other series I was locked into. But I kind of fell off that after, I guess, the first season of Loki. And so kind of going into, I watched Moon Knight and I watched Werewolf by Night, which I loved. And that's what I want more. I just want more one-shot type things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the Guardians holiday special I saw, but I didn't finish She-Hulk. I don't know. I didn't finish What If.
Secret Wars.
No.
Did you watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
I did watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Yeah, I did get through that one.
Oof.
Let's just say when Secret Invasion exists.
I know. Oof to both of them. Oof to both of those projects. Massive oofs.
So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Our mutual friend Dalton Stewart has totally drunk from the he's poisoned the well pretty hard, and
he's dragging you down.
I haven't got there yet, but we'll see. We'll find out where we are maybe by the end of the episode.
Yeah. I'm I'll 5% cautiously optimistic. I think I've been very fatigued. And here's the thing. I think my problem isn't actually the Marvel Cinematic Universe itself. Well, up until Endgame, I actually didn't have problems with the storytelling. I actually think it was pretty brilliant, even if there were misses in that movie or lesser movies or better movies. And even though some of the movies were not kind of like their own thing, they were definitely setting up the next thing. I thought in general, the MCU was pretty impressive. They basically made a TV show that spanned over like 12 years and it was pretty incredible. And the fact that they landed the plane with Endgame as well as they did feels like nothing short of a miracle. My problem with the Marvel Cinematic Universe at that time, I guess two-pronged problems, is one, I never felt like they committed fully to any of the ideas they were definitely kind of elbowing at. I mean, the Winter Soldier, Nazis infiltrating the highest level of government.
Wink.
No, we don't have anything to say about that though. Not a huge deal, because I think at the end of the day, if you accept these movies for what they are, they're just big, fun popcorn blockbusters that they have things that I wish they would go more into. But the reality is they have a giant audience they have to make happy. So therefore,
more broadly too.
Yes. So therefore, they can only be about so much before they turn certain people off, no matter what the movie is. So that was number one. The other thing is mostly that everyone in Hollywood was just trying to make superhero movies. So, we got less emphasis on movie stars, less emphasis on auteurs, and all of a sudden it was all about IP. And superheroes are not the only part of that, but Marvel being as successful it did sort of warp, I think, studio executives for the better part of a decade. So that's not necessarily a criticism of the MCU per se, but it was sort of a side effect that made me a little sad. Yeah. Now, post Endgame, I feel like we've been waiting and kind of aimless, honestly. And what plan they had in place with Kang obviously fell apart. That idea was pretty flimsy to begin with, given there was probably like 6 or 7 movies.
Yeah.
And then Kevin Feige just one day said, that was phase 4. I was like, oh, okay. That said, I think, bringing in Deadpool, the idea that we could get more X-Men movies, the idea that Fantastic Four will have another shot, and I think we'll have a lot more care taken to that particular group of superheroes who have really been underserved. The fact that we'll get, we're going to talk about this at the end of the episode, the fact that Doctor Doom is going to make another appearance on the big screen at all is pretty exciting, even if certain actors are playing them. So I say I'm optimistic because I'm like you guys. I'm going to be there day one for Fantastic Four. If there's anything X-Men related, I'm there. And Blade, of course. Yeah.
Quick interjection. I really do think, especially with what we're going to talk about later, I really think that Kevin Feige's learned his lesson on trying to over-up himself since Endgame, because at the last few Comic-Cons, he's been like, oh, these are the slates for the next 4 years. These are the slates for the next 6 years. And this year he just went, oh, we're just going to talk about these 3 movies. That's it. We're not going to give you anything else. They're
going to these 3 movies, and then we're going to tease the future Avengers movies.
Yeah.
Recalibrate it. I think what it is the oversaturation.
Yeah, because I think they realized how circumstantial a lot of what they were able to do was, and they struck lightning in a 12-year bottle, and they're not likely to do it again, so they need to be more cautious moving forward.
I mean, the momentum they had going in Endgame, I mean, just for context, Captain Marvel, a character no one had heard of until the post, I shouldn't say no one, but largely no one until the post-credit stinger of Avengers Infinity War had heard of, came out and made over $1 billion. Yeah. Well, the follow-up film, The Marvels, came out last year and made $200 million. So it's just... things are different. And the last thing I'll say, I'm sorry, last point I will make is I actually think that TV shows have almost actively eroded a lot of the momentum, honestly. Yeah. Oversaturation, mediocre. Kevin Feige was clearly spread too thin.
No, I feel like that's a lot of the hard sell for Marvel nowadays is it's almost diluted in how much you have to... Like, while it's oversaturated, it's also diluted. Like, you have to... I was just trying to convince my friend to go see Deadpool and Wolverine the other day. And then I was like, oh, wait, I have to give you a list of like 10 or 12 different things that you need to watch to even remotely understand what you're going to go see.
Not to mention, now there's the added wrinkle, because this says that's the 20th Century Fox. It's like, oh, you also need to see Logan.
And they didn't understand anything that I was saying about the studio mergers, blah, 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 all of that stuff. Recast,
And again, I'm not a comic books expert. Friend of the show, Joshua Unruh, if he gave two shits about the MCU anymore, because he does not. You can go listen to his podcast dedicated to it, Listen Up A-Holes. But if he were here, he would probably say something along the lines of this is a similar problem that comics ran into in the 90s.
Yeah.
Where things got so convoluted and people had to do so much work to understand what was going on that eventually it just sort of imploded. Now, the difference is I think Kevin Feige is a really super talented producer. I think he's super smart. And like you said, the Comic-Cons have really shown that he's like, what if we just do less?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with that said, Deadpool and Wolverine was marketed as the savior of the MCU. I mean, Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool saying, I am Marvel Jesus.
Don't make the Christians mad.
Oof, what a weekend. Yeah.
Double whammy with Deadpool and Wolverine and the Olympics. Oof. They're having
the
a
agenda
hard
is
time.
thick and strong, guys.
The question is, can Deadpool and Wolverine reignite some interest and enthusiasm in the MCU? With that said, let's jump into our spoiler-free review of Deadpool and Wolverine.
I told you, you're not welcome here. You're not welcome anywhere. Now get the fuck out of my bar.
Just give me one more drink and then I'll leave.
Hi, Peanut. I'm gonna need you to come with me right now.
Look, lady, I'm not interested.
All right, well, I'm sort of on the tick-tick, so upsy daisy. Here we go. Oh, whiskey dick of the claws. It's quite common in Wolverines over 40.
You don't want this.
Unless you want to take a deep breath through your fucking forehead, I suggest you reconsider. I'm about to lose everything that I've ever cared about.
Not my fucking problem.
Is that what you said when your world went to shit?
Come again.
This Wolverine let down his entire world.
According to IMDb, Deadpool and Wolverine is described as Wade Wilson is offered a place in the MCU by the TVA, that's at the time Variance Authority for those who don't keep up, but it instead recruits a variant of Wolverine to save his universe from extinction. So a few notable things about Deadpool and Wolverine. So this film is directed by Shawn Levy, and this is the third film in the Deadpool franchise that launched under the 20th Century Fox banner in 2016. That film was directed by Tim Miller, followed by Deadpool 2 in 2018. That was directed by David Leitch. You probably know him from the original John Wick most recently. He did The Fall Guy, Bullet Train, a lot of action movies. Though it is the fourth time that Ryan Reynolds has played the character on the big screen since 2009's X-Men Origins Wolverine. It is the 10th time. This is the 10th time that Hugh Jackman has played James Logan Howlett since 2000's X-Men, and it is the first time since 2017. So it's a 7-year gap, which is the largest gap he's had between Wolverine roles. This film, I mean, I don't know if it's creatively saving the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it certainly is saving the box office. It opened with an estimated $211 million on its opening weekend at the domestic box office here in the U.S., instantly becoming the biggest opening for an R-rated movie. It was also the number 8 biggest opening weekend in history in the U.S. And then when you combine the $211 million with the overseas numbers, it grossed $441 million worldwide on its opening weekend, which is just insane. That is Avengers level box office right there.
Yeah.
So clearly, there's been all this conversation about, I don't think people want in. I think we're fatigued. Well, it turns out if you have the right project and you market it really well, people are still going to show up.
Numbers don't lie.
No way. 2024, by the way, is also the first year since 2012 that Marvel has released only one movie in a calendar year. So talking about that MCU fatigue, we were getting 2, 3, 4 movies for quite a while. Now, we're going to jump to our spoiler-free review here. Given how integral the Easter eggs, cameos, or surprises are, if you haven't seen the film, we certainly don't want to ruin those. So we're only going to be talking about things that are explicitly covered in the trailer. And also, our spoiler section will be kind of brief, honestly. With that said, Arthur Gordon, what are your overall thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine?
All right, I'll start with what I liked. I enjoyed we're talking about it in depth, but I did enjoy the cameos and the characters that are brought into this story and what we get. And that's about all I can say there. Because I think, I'll just have to spoil everything for that. And I think Hugh's great as Wolverine. I still think he is just, I don't know. I mean, part of it's probably just the nostalgia. I mean, I've seen him in that role for 24 years.
Yeah.
I could
born
picture
for it.
Yeah. And it's like, Hugh Jackman's not an actor who I'm like, oh, there's a new Hugh Jackman movie opening. I better get to the theater.
What? You didn't go see The Greatest Showman opening weekend?
I mean, I don't know.
Unfortunately.
I don't know about you guys. I am that guy, but okay.
But yeah, you put him in anything Wolverine related, and I'm hyped, and he's perfect for it, and he does it so well, and it never feels like he's phoning it in. It seems like he's having fun, and him and Reynolds have good chemistry. They really do engage together well. They play the straight man and the fool really well. You'd mentioned Ryan Reynolds and some of those TCM things. He'd mentioned, I think, looking at Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Midnight Run as a couple of the influences, to do the sort of character dynamics here between the two of them. And I think that works really well. And I laughed a few times, but ultimately it just, I don't think it works for me, the movie on the whole. I don't know. I don't mind fan service or Easter eggs or cameos, but if that's what your movie is, like, with nothing else really to hold it together, it's just, moment after moment after moment to get the crowd to pop. It feels empty, and it's kind of hard to see any sort of long-term viability there in that. And so it's just like this sugar rush that offers nothing else. It's very pornographic in that it strings together those moments that excite and titillate, but there's nothing beyond that moment after the kind of scene is passed. There's a montage very early in the film that in the moment I was like, well, this is really cool to see some of these things on the big screen. And then later I was like, but there's really nothing for that. It didn't serve the story. It was just, look at these cool things. And that's kind of the movie to me. And so, that, and I don't really mind vulgarity or crass humor, but it felt like just the same kind of jokes over and over. And I mean, I know that's Deadpool shtick, and like, I mean, if that's your thing, if you can get on, if you like Deadpool, then, 15-year-old me would probably have been like, whoa, this is so edgy and cool.
Yeah.
But now I'm just, I don't know. And there's some creative wordplay. We get some fun words paired together.
Oh, yeah.
Some very clever euphemisms. And I laughed a few times, but it just feels like that's the only kind of well that they go to with that comedy. And it just doesn't always work for me. And for me, I don't know if it's the worst thing Marvel's done in Phase 4, but it's pretty low on the totem pole, I think. I really just, walking out, the more I thought about it, the less I've liked it. Mm-hmm. And so it feels so empty and so sort of, I don't know, pandery. And
this sounds like my review for of every Marvel movie for the last 5 years.
Sorry. There were things I was hoping, I think the villain on paper is very cool. And there's nothing there, very one-dimensional, I think, as a villain. And so I don't know, we'll talk about this more later. I just don't know how this fits into the future of the MCU. If this is supposed to be the big, life support, clear, hit the chest, get the heartbeat. And again, I mean, I can't speak to the dollar because people saw it, but for me personally, it wasn't for me. And so I think, at the end of the day, Ryan Reynolds, I just don't love him because everything he does is Deadpool. And that's all. I think his performance is always that smirky, sarcastic.
He figured out the formula with Deadpool. Now every role he's in is just that shtick.
And not every role calls for that. And it's hard to watch. Yeah. And so I think he's a good person. Like, he seems really fun. Like, just seeing him in interviews and stuff, he seems really fun, but just at a movie level. And then Shawn Levy, I think he's a competent director, but he's now touting himself as the sort of the populist filmmaker. And if he's just going to make these sorts of movies that are just,
you mean by these sorts of movies? You mean Ryan Reynolds is going to let him make these movies?
Yeah, there were dozens of directors during Hollywood's golden age that had this sort of philosophy of, the golden age of Hollywood is very much assembly line, cookie cutter, get the movie in, get it going, get it out. But there were dozens of directors during that time that turned out much better work than Levy will ever do. And so I think,
didn't like Real Steel.
Oh boy. The Atom Project.
Free Guy.
Free Guy.
Like I
No.
said, he's now just going to be now. Ryan Reynolds has got him in handcuffs. He's like, you're just going to make movies for me.
Free Guy is the thesis for probably why I really dislike this movie.
I
gosh.
understand. I I don't necessarily agree, but I see it. And
Yeah.
it's a very viable point of view. Reynolds can be very grating, and I think the older I get, the more the shtick wears on me.
When he's balanced, right? And that was,
Yeah.
I think, the great thing about Deadpool 2, him and Cable.
Yeah.
And that works, similarly here with him and Logan Wolverine. So when he's got that kind of foil that matches and can kind of balance him out, it's fine. But if it's just him kind of left to his own device, it's way too much for me.
Yeah. No, I think those are all very valid criticisms. Yep. I'll pass it to you. Jada, what did you think of the film?
Okay, so I'm kind of on the opposite spectrum. I mean, like, yeah, duh. I thought this was an extremely fun movie. Like, I haven't had that much fun or laughed that much in a theater in a really, really long time. I don't know if it's just because the world is so bleak right now, or if like just I need like to take some like stimulants or what. I don't know. I absolutely loved the chemistry between Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds. Like, they're kind of unmatched, even though a lot of people are like, oh, it's their first time on screen together, which isn't true, but we're not going to talk about the other one. I feel like they work together very, very, very well. They really, really add presence to a screen. They make you want to pay attention. I kind of disagree with your cameo comment, because a cameo is someone who I feel comes in, does nothing, leaves. I feel like there's a lot of unannounced supporting characters in this movie
I agree.
rather than cameos, because if you think back on movies like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, The Flash, those, even whenever they had the oh my gosh, what is the Illuminati? Yeah, in Multiverse of Madness, they had 5 people right there. We were like, oh my God, that's so cool. And then they immediately killed them off. They served no purpose to the story other than to take Doctor Strange out of his situation and then just add time for Wanda to do more destruction. I feel like what this movie presented was not that. I feel like it was very respectful to the characters that appeared, and they each served a purpose that gave closure to the characters that they were and to the characters that we were reintroduced to. I don't know. I feel like I'm just very, I saw this on Friday in the morning. I hate going to theaters with packed people just because I'm like, please don't perceive me. But there was quite a few people. I saw it in IMAX. I really had a fun time. I really enjoyed just seeing it. And I thought that I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself a few days, come back, see what I really don't like. I have some of those points, but mostly I feel very positively about it. I do think that overall the storyline could have been more cohesive. It feels like at some points I was like, wait, what are we doing again? I know that we're here and that we're doing this thing right now, but what's the overarching thing that we're reaching towards? I feel like it could have been a bit more streamlined, I guess you would say.
More focused in that way, yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with your analysis of Cassandra Nova. It's not a spoiler.
Yeah, she's in the trailer.
Yeah, she's in the trailer. Everyone knows that it's Cassandra Nova. I feel like they should have done way more with her. I feel like Emma Corrin is absolutely fantastic.
Shoot, she could have replaced Kang. No joke.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, not even joking.
Fantastic actor. Extremely talented. I just feel like they wrote her into a box. They kind of had her be the psychotic Xavier's twin, and then just I can do whatever I want because I have infinite powers. And then they didn't provide her any more backstory until like the last 5 minutes, which I was like, why didn't we do this earlier? It just kind of took it to a the best villains are the ones that you kind of want to root for a little bit. Like, I loved Thanos. I didn't love Whiplash and Iron Man 2, but I don't know. That's just like a villain that came to mind.
Whiplash,
but,
cool. Love it.
The
Yes.
Boyd. The Boyd. Yeah. You didn't like the Boyd guy?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like if they had spent a little less time on the stabbing gags and a little more time on fleshing out Cassandra Nova, it would have made her a little bit better for me. I still feel like she was a threat. She was very threatening. But I don't know. I'm always like,
I thought her introduction scene, we won't say what happens, but I thought it was A+ introduction,
Yeah.
and then after that she fizzles pretty hard, and then by the end of the movie I was literally like, why is she doing what she's doing? Yeah.
Because we almost spend no time with her.
Right.
We only see her when the main characters do, and then we never go back to her whenever, unless it's like, oh, they're coming, oh, they're going away, oh, here's the like, we never really, you know what I mean? Like, we never really spend some quality time with her.
And she's like an Omega level threat, right? And
huge.
Like to your point, like, yeah, she could replace Kane. Like, she
she's
could
that
be the
powerful.
big bad.
Yeah.
And she's already in the same
I mean,
place.
she's Charles Xavier's twin. I mean, that speaks to some level of her ability and danger.
And again, the actress was really pretty exceptional with what she was given, I thought.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good call out. Which is again, look, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has a villain problem in a movie. It's like,
who would have thought?
it's like you learn, you get Thanos, and you're like, all right, they finally figured it out, and then we take a step back. Laron, Chapman, what did you think of Deadpool and Wolverine?
So Arthur came in pretty cold, and Jada came in pretty hot. And then I'm coming in probably room temp. You know?
Room temp, okay. Yeah.
And I say that like, you know, this actually for me feels like straight satire and not actually like a superhero film. Like, and in a way that works for me because again, I'm kind of fatigued with this. I was like, anything new. This is a straight comedy. I'm here, you know, and it's an R-rated comedy, even better, you know, like, I just think that tonally, it's kind of all over the place. Like it goes from, you know, the hard R irreverence and then it tries to earn some sentimental moments that I just don't think.
It's a good thing you have Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine.
He's a good
Dead
actor,
serious.
so he's going for it. I just don't think the movie earns it.
Oh no,
you know,
no,
like,
no,
so,
it doesn't.
So
it would have been a clown fest without Hugh Jackman.
absolutely a lesser actor would have made.
He brings
it
so
cringy.
much gravitas. Yeah, well, yeah. Anyway, I just think the Wolverine material, in my opinion, is extremely mediocre. But because Hugh Jackman just gets the character and is just such a really top-notch actor, he like really levels it up a couple of levels.
Yeah, and I think for me, like I enjoyed this moment to moment. It kind of withers away after I finished it. So I will say I don't know how big the impact of it's going to be, but I do feel like. It's junk food. It just happens to be junk food I would eat, you know? So for me, it's enjoyable for what it is. And I think that, yeah, I don't know how much of a splash it's going to make in terms of stitching things together for new properties. But I do think that as a standalone, like kind of just, you know, middling entertainment sort of thing, I got a lot of fun out of it. I thought the chemistry between the two of them was great. The egregious, as they say in the film, cameos. I mean, normally I'm just going to sit here and like, oh my God, but it's too obnoxious. But I can't lie. I mean, my body shook a couple of times for a couple of them.
Right.
I was like, oh, he's still in there. There's still a fan in there somewhere that's excited about a couple of these things happening. You know, so I think that's indicative of kind of where the MCU is. It's just kind of like, I'm still here. I'm just waiting for you guys to really shock me or surprise me. I don't think this did that, but at least I would put this on before some of the other entries that have come in recently, just for sheer pleasure, you know, so like you said, like a pure sugar high without me overpraising it, you know.
I think I'm a little more okay with it being the air quote sugar high because it's a comedy. Honestly, I'm of three minds of this. I know 3 minds. I know.
A regular Hydra over here.
Okay. Number one is, as a person who has been watching movies and has come of age as superhero films have become successful, I think all of us have, our generation, I'm not even going to say me, but our generation has been a big part of the rise of superheroes is like sort of overtaking like modern Greek myths sort of thing, right? Modern mythologies, right? As a person who has followed that evolution from the 90s when it was like you were afraid to talk to your friends about the Spider-Man cartoon you watched because you weren't sure if they were going to be into it. You thought they might make fun of you, to now everyone's a fan. I felt tremendously rewarded for being invested in superhero cinema history over the last 25 years.
That's true.
Yeah.
It was a lot. I mean,
If
I know,
you've been following along, then this gave you some things.
and I'm not just talking about just the movies. I'm talking about the news, the Comic-Con panels,
Yes.
like everything related to sort of superhero in our pop culture.
the casting, the not casting,
The projects that didn't work out, the ones that
Yeah.
did work out, unfortunately. So it was, and I know this has been called this over the internet, so it's really not novel, but it is a love letter to the pre-MCU superhero genre. It's like before there was a sacred timeline, before there was a machine that just immediately led to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, even with new characters. It was a bunch of like one-off movies. And we were talking about this a little bit before recording. It was like before the executives realized how much money they could make off superheroes, it was actually very auteur driven. It was Sam Raimi is going to make a Spider-Man movie. It's Bryan Singer is going to make an X-Men movie. And we got some duds in there. Sure, there were Daredevil. Not all of them were good. Daredevil was terrible. The Fantastic Four movies were not great.
Punisher.
Which one? All of them.
Thomas Jane.
Trick question.
But we got those movies, and I think all of us kind of participated in that by showing up, whether we were able to make it to the theater for most of these or buying the DVDs or whatever. So as a person who has participated in that and been really invested, I felt tremendously rewarded. So that's number one. As a film critic, I felt assaulted by Disney's victory lap celebrating its consolidation of 20th Century Fox, strung together by an extremely flimsy at best story, packed with, in my opinion, largely, not all, there's some exceptions, but largely mediocre action set pieces, really just designed to serve as a vehicle for the jokes. And yeah, I mean, again, I think you raised a great point, but let's say cameos. But yes, most of the cameos actually are pretty meaty, if all things equal. And lastly, so anyway, as a critic, I think this is a very bad movie. I think that the plot is as bare bones you can get. It doesn't hold. It's too long. There were so many times I was like, I don't know what's going on right now. And I'm into it and I don't know what's going on. But you know what? I'm just here for the laughs. And I did enjoy that. But I just think that the filmmaking's not even that great. It's like, it feels like an MCU movie. And again, talking about the MCU larger from a film production standpoint, what I mean is the color palette's really muted. Like things look washed out. You can tell.
Not a genre film.
Exactly. Well, even Deadpool 1 and 2, which were on significantly lower budgets, look more visually, they have a more unique visual identity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So Deadpool is like, Deadpool and Wolverine just has, in my opinion, all of the worst things about the MCU packed into this movie. Okay. So that's as a film critic. Number 3, as a lifelong X-Men fan, I'm with Arthur. Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. I'm there. This movie made me cry twice, not once, but twice. Why? Because of freaking Hugh Jackman. I mean, yeah, his chemistry, and him and Ryan Reynolds do have some pretty incredible chemistry. So I got to give Reynolds some credit. But I mean, the emotional moments here really rely on. I mean, there's one scene in particular that we'll talk about in spoilers. It was like one of the 3 quiet moments we had in the movie, and I just was like, I'm feeling things just because of how well he's emoting, So all of those things say I am very mixed. I love it. The thing I love it about it, I also hate about it in another context. It's really tough. I had a great time. It's a great watch. I'll probably watch it again. I'll probably enjoy it. I think it's a bad movie.
A bad movie that you enjoyed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Fair.
I also just want to say, not to dogpile on Shawn Levy. I know he's best friends with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, apparently, but he is easily the weakest director who's worked on this franchise. Some of the set pieces, again, being vague, I actually think there's 2 major times where Deadpool and Wolverine fight each other, and I thought both of those times they knew that was the one. Those were the ones they had to get. I thought those were great. Pretty much all the rest of the action sequences in the movie, I couldn't track what was going on half the time. There was one in particular in the last act we'll get to where you could see they were trying something. I was like, oh, you're trying something, but you don't pull it off. And it bums me out. So I say it to say, I don't hate on Shawn Levy. He's made some good, okay, solid movies. I mean,
A roller coaster.
3 different adjectives. Listen, one after the other.
Night at the Museum and Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian, Date Night, Real Steel. I had fun with those movies. Oh, and he actually did the other Night at the Museum too, Secret of the Tomb. I enjoy those movies, but I would not, to your point, Arthur, call him a great filmmaker as much as he makes a very specific type of thing okay.
You're saying he should stick to father-son stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Maybe get a nice TV show. Maybe that's what he needs.
I think a TV show. You know,
One
maybe,
and a Half Men.
and maybe if he really wants to push himself, we can put him on like some HBO comedy or something like that. Put him on an episode of Hacks or something like that, maybe. Yeah. So all that said, that was a very long-winded way to say complicated, man. Complicated. So much more to talk about in spoilers, but before we do, let's go ahead and give our letter, man, all pronunciations today. Let's give our letter grade verdicts on Deadpool and Wolverine. Laron, Chapman.
I'm giving this a B-. You know, I think it's fine. You know, I think it kind of delivers what it's selling. You know what I mean? Like, and with me, I think going in with kind of tempered expectations, but again, brought in for all the same reasons that we're saying, you know, like it gave me enough pleasure, you know, out of that. And I think that there's a muchness to it that I think that is kind of a huge issue with it, is that it starts off really strong. Like that opening credit sequence was speaking to my 90s, you know, teen boy heart, but I felt like
you guys did some weird stuff in the 90s, man.
We did some weird things, man. But, you know, I feel like the needle drops are, again, gross and egregious, but they're still the songs on my playlist. So I can't really, you know, say I didn't enjoy that, you know. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, there's so much happening. And I think that maybe at the hour and 15, 20 minute mark, like as you're getting into the third act, the muchness starts to wear because it's not doing anything new. You know what I mean? Like, so, but, you know, I think overall, I mean, I can see why people are enjoying this. I can see why, you know, it's why is the thing that's kind of hit the threshold, because it's kind of like, getting away from the monotonous kind of brooding aspect of that, you know, kind of like the bleakness that we've kind of seen in the franchise thus far. And so I feel like this is just like pure sugar rush. It's like, let's just give the people what they want. Fan service, the movie. You know what I mean? Like, so, and you know, that has the mileage that it's going to have with each person. It's going to change. So
that alone gets you the B-.
Gets me the B-. It's like scraping the bottom of that B. It's like
very bottom
of that B-.
It's an 80.2.
It's
a 79.5 rounded up.
79.99999.
That's the student I like that I'm trying to
grade on a curve. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I don't want to get off the topic of letter grades. But I do want to say something you said there just reminded me. And actually, Deadpool and the Multiverse of Madness thing was also a massive hit. Although I think this is going to be bigger, but that movie was also surprisingly. It also made almost $1 billion and still kind of closer to the pandemic era. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this movie actually did deliver on what everyone was wanting from that movie in terms of like all the crazy cameos and everything. I just want to preface that for the spoiler free. It does have, unlike that movie, which I think everyone felt kind of like, that wasn't very madness. This one really has the stuff.
Which is crazy because Sam Raimi, everyone's beloved superhero director, was at the helm of that and didn't do half of what he said he would.
Yeah,
I know.
I wonder how much of that
is studio interference.
I feel that with all these, they bring in the auteurs. We had Chloe Zhao for Eternals. We had all these different properties where you're like,
well. And when it gets to the second half of the movie and it turns into a Sam Raimi movie, that's when I'm like,
this the whole movie?
When he like digs deep into like the horror elements of it, I
wanted that the entire time, but it does feel like the studio interference comes in and just says like, we're getting you for name recognition, but you don't actually get to like flex your vision very much, but we get, you know, you get to say
to be a figurehead for the movie.
Exactly.
I also understand that he came in really late in the production because there was a breakup with Scott Derrickson, so I think he had. I think he had very minimal pre-production time, if I understand correctly. But
that makes sense.
I mean, Marvel previses out a lot of that stuff years in advance. I mean, to Shang-Chi's point, right? I mean, that third act was already pretty much done, I think, before anybody else really got involved.
Yikes. Yeah. Well, anyway, side tangent, but Laron Chapman gives it a B-. Would you rank it higher than Multiverse of Madness, though?
I probably watched this before that. Yeah.
Okay.
Just for the dick jokes and our, you know, the irreverent stuff. There's some certain things that just appeal to Laron's juvenile sense of humor that are not in that one. So
okay. Jada?
Quick question: have you guys recently rewatched the Deadpool movies? Deadpool 1 and 2?
I didn't get
in
to 'em.
preparation of this. No.
Deadpool 2, yeah.
Yeah, I rewatched both of them, and this is kind of what changed my rating a little bit. At first, I was going to be like, oh yeah, A, simple A. The first Deadpool still holds up pretty well. A lot of the writing is Deadpool 2 doesn't hold up for me at all. I actually actively kind of dislike that movie now. But I was very much like, I mean, of course, that's like the like high of like, oh, we got a new superhero movie. Oh, I got to see my favorite character on screen again. And I came out of this movie again being like, I need to give myself a second. And then I remembered watching Deadpool 1 and 2 before coming to see this. And just the fact that I immediately doubted if it would have good staying power. If it's gonna still be a good-ish movie in 5, 10, 15 years when I rewatch it, if I'm gonna have the same feelings, I'm giving it a B+.
All right, B+.
Not quite Laron's bottom of the barrel B, but I'm giving it a barely there B.
Okay.
All right, barely there B. Arthur Gordon?
Look, I'm giving Deadpool and Wolverine the D, which feels like a very Deadpool joke to make.
Wade would love that.
There you go. I don't think it's a total and I'm going to give myself a cop out. I could rewatch it in a few years and it could grow on me, or the cracks could show even harder. And I'm not counting out revisiting it, mainly because I think the Wolverine stuff's so good.
Yeah,
most of it. But yeah, so for me, coming out of the theater, I was initially sitting in my car. I was like, hey, a B. But the more I thought about it, the more kind of empty I felt with it, just the lower it's gotten for me. But I could revisit and have that sugar rush again and maybe come out a little more positive. But for now, it's the D.
I also feel like it's kind of, sorry to interrupt. I also feel like it's kind of a juxtaposition of where everyone's expecting Ryan Reynolds to carry the comedy. Everyone's expecting Hugh Jackman to carry the emotional weight of the film. And he did. He delivered on it a lot, but it felt almost a little uneven.
Yep.
Yeah, it did.
How
I was thinking about that.
They tried, especially with a certain scene we're going to talk about later, they tried to have Ryan kind of be like he's solemn now. He doesn't have anything to say when everyone's been telling him to shut the fuck up for the entire movie. And I'm like, but I'm waiting for him to tell a joke because he's never stopped until now. Just because it's not how they have written him up until now.
Not as dynamic either,
yeah, I feel like they wanted to kind of sort of make them share the emotional weight in this movie, but it ended up just leaning towards Wolverine as usual.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. I don't think Deadpool has an arc in this movie, actually. I mean, I know they tell you what his arc is, but I don't think the movie demonstrates him learning anything or growing or looking in anything differently. It's
He's
just
the
like
exact same at the beginning and the end.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, maybe a criticism of the whole series, but I even think that first movie there's an arc to his character in that one. The second one's a little shakier, but even that movie has a clear plot though. You understand why he's doing what he's doing, and it's a middle and end. This movie, it's like
jukebox. It's
he needs to matter. Shuffle. What does that mean? Who knows? Okay, as a movie, I'm giving this a D. As a ride for fans, I think it's an A. And I think a thing that's been, especially post Endgame, I think really just come to terms with that the MCU is really just a ride. Not to start a fire like our good old buddy Marty Scorsese, but like this really does feel like a ride, as in it's so much fun when you're on it, especially the first time when you don't know what's just around the corner and there's so many surprises. The jokes are funny. I am not sure this is going to have staying power. I think I'm with you guys. Maybe is the answer. I don't tend to think so, but maybe. So A for ride, D for movie. Let's give her a C+.
all right.
Okay,
That's fair.
Good happy
fair.
medium.
Yeah.
Because I did laugh a lot. And what do we go to movies like this if you're not going to laugh a lot and enjoy time with friends and audiences or whatever? Hey, Arthur Gordon, what would you recommend people watch either, I guess from your perspective, instead of Deadpool and Wolverine?
If we're talking about breaking the fourth wall and crass humor, I say go watch Fleabag. There are 2 seasons, both just a few episodes. Female Ridge is just incredible, and we get Hot Priest in season 2, and it's just a good time. And it's so funny and bleak and cynical, and it's great. I I just picked up a book called West Heart Kill. I haven't got to read it yet, but it is an extremely meta murder mystery. So I think a little bit Deadpool meets Agatha Christie. So I'm really interested to check that out. And speaking of MCU books, I think another one that's on my list is the MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios.
Oh, is that the one by Joanne Robinson? And,
yeah,
and
Dave Gonzalez and Gavin Edwards. Yeah.
Love those guys.
That's one I've been wanting to check out and kind of see that sort of analysis of the studio element, the business side of it, and really dig into that. I think Clive Barker's Mr. Begone is a good time. It's a fun read about a demon trying to convince you to burn the book as you're reading it. So very, I think, big Deadpool energy there. And if you want something like Deadpool and Wolverine, a lot of cameos, a lot of Easter eggs, actually has a narrative. Even if I'm not a huge fan, I'm going to say Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One.
Ooh. That does deliver on the Easter eggs.
Which also has a big corporate, we've got your childhood energy.
Yeah. Isn't the future great where everything's owned by one co? Okay. Jada, what would you recommend?
Okay, so I'm going to kind of pull out one of my favorite movies of all time. If you really love like wacky, almost insane meta levels of comedy, but also kind of geek references, Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Nice.
I feel like that is kind of a really good, like a really good indicator of like, this is a movie that knows how to be funny, but also knows how to make you like an asshole main character. And really loves to have really fun action sequences and lots of great needle drops as well. And I'm actually going to also give a comic book reference or recommendation. I'm actually going to recommend Uncanny X-Force Volume 1. So short little backstory. There was this horrible time in the early and mid-aughts where all of Deadpool's writers for comic books kind of wrote him as just like a Three Stooges type character where he just came in to talk shit, just didn't really have any sort of gravitas. He was just kind of a fluff character, very surface level. There was a writer, Rick Remender, who is the author of this. It is an entire arc, Uncanny X-Force, where it's actually a team up because it's an X-Force comic. It has Psylocke, Archangel, Deadpool, and Phantom X. They're all joining Wolverine. They're joining his squad of assassins, which is pretty cool. Their first mission that they have to do is that they have to go and kill a reborn Apocalypse, who is reborn with no memories and is an innocent little baby. And they have to kind of come to terms with the moral repercussions of what they possibly are having to do. It's a really, really great iteration of Deadpool and Wade Wilson. It's a really great writing of Wolverine, Logan, Psylocke especially. All three of those characters I think are written very, very, very well. The art is Jerome Pena and Esad Ribic. The artwork is absolutely fantastic. It's a great team up movie, or a great team up comic, excuse me. I think it's also really starts a good era of comics where people are like, oh, Wade Wilson can be a person behind the mask. He can be he can be someone beyond the dick jokes and the fourth wall breaking and the things like that. So I really, really love this run. Remender only really writes 1 through 7. There's an entire 3 volumes of it, but I really, really love his first few volumes that he wrote for this. It's really great.
Very nice. We don't get comic recommendations on here very often, so much appreciated. Laron, Chapman, what would you recommend?
So for irreverent R-rated kind of, comic booky type of films, I was thinking like the original Kick-Ass, not the sequel.
Ooh.
And then also just for in studio, kind of corporate circle jerk, satiricals about movies in general, Tropic Thunder. Just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you know, another hard R movie that's
Yeah.
definitely given the finger to, you know, the studio, and I feel like the system, and I feel like, and also not also featuring another actor that we that made another larger announcement earlier this week. So, you know, he's everywhere. He was he's been placing himself here for a long time.
Playing another dude.
Disguised as another dude.
Exactly. And you know, and it's a whole other podcast, but I was never offended by it because I always felt like it was paying homage. We could never do that today.
Oh,
you know?
no, absolutely not.
But it was funny then.
The landscape
Funny
has
is still-
changed.
I think it's still funny now. You just have to put all these you have to put all this context. Yeah,
Yes.
context matters in comedy. It turns out.
It does. Yes.
Yes, Tropic Thunder. What a great recommend. One of my favorite comedies of all time. Laron, great pick. You know, low hanging fruit, but I'm just here to spread the word, the gospel of X-Men '97 now on Disney
yeah.
Plus. It is some of my favorite superhero media of all time. No, not just well, it's not technically MCU. Not Disney, Marvel, not like movies. It's genuinely gets X-Men better than I thought I got X-Men. It takes everything I loved about the characters, cranks it up. It leans into the soap opera. It leans into the drama, but also you love the team. They got the great chemistry and the spectacle. It just has the goods. Like every episode was just a banger. First season that just wrapped up earlier this year on Disney Plus. We're getting at least 2 more. Also, if you want something that's a little more meta, sort of subverting the genre of the day, I'm going to recommend Last Action Hero starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is a send-off of the action movie genre that he built. Is extremely meta and is riffing relentlessly on action movies, guns, violence, like tropes. You know, it turns out it was a John McTiernan joint, right? Director of Die Hard. And maybe it was popular with the day. I don't feel like a lot of people still talk about that movie, but I think it deserves to be in the conversation along with Die Hard. I think it's like
I remember it opened pretty close to Jurassic Park.
Oh, really?
And that kind of killed its theatrical legs, I think.
It's dinosaurs.
But it's good.
Yeah.
I think that was the first movie I saw in theaters alone, like without my parents.
It holds up to, I think I did an episode with you guys on GoodTrash a few years ago, but I think I rewatched it with Laron a couple years back, and I was like, man, this thing really just, it still works big time. Plus you get, Charles Dance as a bad guy in that movie. Always love to see him show up for any amount of screen time. All right, so much to talk about in the spoiler section. So if you don't want to be spoiled on Deadpool and Wolverine, go ahead and tune out now.
Go away.
Great. Stuck in an elevator with 5 guys on a high-protein diet.
Oh, wait.
Dreams really do come true.
So just shut it. You're up next.
Thank you, sir. You look really nice today. It's the green. It brings out the seriousness in your eyes.
Oh, my God. You ever shut up, pal?
No, not when I'm awake.
But for real, this is your last chance. Okay, so I don't know that we're going to spend a ton of time on this first topic, but I do think it's important. This is a movie that leads with Deadpool and Wolverine. So it's the third film in the Deadpool series, and it does have several callbacks to plots from the previous films. Most notably, they finally were able to get Hugh Jackman in one of the Deadpool movies. That was sort of a running gag in 1 and 2. So I have to ask, removing yourself from the movie, we're going to talk about that in a second too, but just this idea of getting Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, that has been teased in the movies, and also if you follow either of them on social media, has been hyped for years. Did this pay that off sufficiently for you? Jada, I'll start with you.
I feel like it did. I mean, if we're talking out removing from the movie itself and just kind of because the landscape has changed so much since Hugh Jackman started playing Wolverine back in 2000. I think we got the buddy comedy that they had advertised and that they've been like low key teasing us for almost over a decade. I think they did what they came to do, and they did what they said they were going to. So yeah.
Very nice. Arthur?
A strong agree. I think it works out very well. I don't fault their chemistry. I don't, critique that. I think they play off of each other very well. I think to your point, that it's a little weighted in Wade's favor, because he does talk so much. But I think they have a good chemistry, and it's really interesting to see some of those fight scenes play out. They felt maybe a little redundant because there's not a lot of dynamics to just stabbing each other. But that second one in the car almost, I think they build it, and I'd be curious, but it almost plays like a sex scene in the way that they have the tension.
Oh, yeah.
In that
An
moment.
allegory for
Yeah.
gay sex.
And so it's really fun. Yeah. And so I think it pays it off in that way. Yeah.
I loved when you see them all tied up with all the seatbelts too.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Honda Odyssey for apparently having the longest seatbelts ever.
Yeah, wrapped around his entire body.
Oh man, Laron, what did you think? Did this pay off on your dream of the Hugh Jackman Ryan Reynolds pairing?
Yeah, I feel like, if there's a bromance here between the two of them, it works really well on screen. But also, I feel like the comedy works extremely well here. I tend to differ with the audience here about the dramatic scenes. Every time one of those would pop up, it just didn't work for me. Just because I was like, this is only working for me on this one level. And so whenever it tried to be serious or even try to like teeter around sentimentality, I kind of checked out. But I do think in terms of a rivalry, in terms of the dynamic between the two of them and the payoff of their interaction with one another, yes, all that is there. They listened to us in that regard, and they gave us what I think most of us would have expected from that. So in that respect, I think it did really well.
Yeah, I mean, I just think they did a great job. Those guys, I don't know if they're actually friends, but I believe they are. You know what I mean? Like they because they do have such chemistry. And I know they're
the actors or the characters.
But I think both. I think I question anyway. Either way, whether or not it's performative or real, like watching them on this press tour is a lot of fun. They clearly know each other really well, and then seeing that in the movie is a blast, where they're basically like, we know what you guys showed up for. I actually thought the first fight scene, it's a little redundant, but I laughed. I got so much just getting to see them duke it out with blood, language, the whole 9 yards, everything that 15-year-old me would have been like just died to see. And we get to see it on the big screen realized, and it's silly and it's goofy, but it pays off. And there's a couple of dramatic moments. I thought in particular, there's the one moment where Hugh Jackman just unloads on him in the car
Just
about
fucking
how
roast the shit out of him.
worthless he is. It's just like, and that was incredible.
Yeah.
Like, again, great moment.
Oscar clip. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it had that gravitas to it. So I think everything they're doing together works really, really well. And I'm a little less warm on whether or not, I think bringing Wolverine only works because of that. And my honest opinion is the only reason he really works in this movie is because they have set it up over the years. They've built that chemistry, because I just want to see what you guys think. Did this movie, on a story level, does it really justify bringing Hugh Jackman out of retirement? I mean, I'm not mad, but it's funny that he came out of retirement for what I think has to be the weakest Wolverine material he's done since Origins, at least. Laron?
I mean, you just implanted that idea in my head. So I'm marinating on that. I do feel like I don't think you're too far off. I will say that because Jackman again is so good in this role, like, you know what I mean? Like top 5, Jackman performances, this is here. So I feel like, again, yeah, I'm not mad that he's here, and I liked seeing him. I like seeing this aspect of him too, because there's we talked about one of you and I, our favorite comic book films is Logan, and that iteration of him is so moving, and it's surprising that they were able to milk out something so, palpable like that from a comic book movie, and have stakes and meaning. There's some weird carryover from that here that just feels tonally not correct for this material.
I'd agree with that.
And so, so I'm it's kind of a mixed bag. It's like I enjoyed seeing the irreverent, vulgar version of Logan, but it does also feel like that's more in service of the Ryan Reynolds movie we're watching, and not the character that we're used to seeing, even in the R-rated version of
and even though it's a different version of the character,
right,
which I know
fair.
Technically is your get out of jail free card, but it doesn't. It just doesn't feel like we've seen Wolverine here in a position similar to how he is in this movie done better in at least one, if not two other movies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Jada, what do you think? Is Hugh Jackman, was this creatively justified, or is he just selling out? Did Disney give him the biggest dump truck full of money in human history?
Not you setting me up to get sniped. I will just straight up say, whenever they announced that Hugh Jackman was coming back, I was like vehemently against it. I was like, this is like a farce. Why are you doing this? You had Logan, that was your swan song. Why are you reviving the dead corpse? Why are you doing this? And then I was like,
For an NSYNC cover, that's why.
oh yes, of course. Yeah. Honestly, I loved that. I liked Hugh Jackman in it was what he did, he knows the character really well. His iteration of the character really well. He's done it for over 2 decades now. He's reclaiming his world record. But to be honest, I feel like they did not, with the writing and with the plot points that they did and made it a multiverse character, it could have been virtually any other actor in that position.
Right.
And it would have been the exact same story. Because Hugh Jackman's version in the one that we've known for all that amount of time, and we've established that multiverse characters can have different faces. That iteration is killed off. They could have brought back a brand new actor for a one-off movie and just been like, this is the character that is in this universe that's done A, B, and C. I feel like they wanted to make it like, oh, this is the same Wolverine that you all know and love. He just has a different story. And I'm like, but then it's not the same Wolverine. Again, I'm not saying that Hugh Jackman didn't do a great job of what he was supposed to do. He came and did what he wanted. I know that he probably just wanted to come back and have some fun. Yeah. I know he hated that training regiment, but he wanted a nice Marvel check, which I mean, hell, I would too.
Especially when you're Hugh Jackman and your Marvel check just by showing up is going to be huge.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I'm not saying that he didn't show up and do his job. I'm just saying he couldn't have been the only option. Right. He shouldn't have been the only option.
Yeah. Arthur, what do you think?
I think Jada may have swayed me opposite. I was just going to say, I mean, to your point, right? They have their outs. It's a different universe. Comic book characters always come back to life. Like, there's so many ways you can kind of play that. I like Jada's argument, though. I mean, yeah, you could have brought anybody in, but I think to your point, the rivalry between Hugh Jackman, I just doesn't sell. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I don't think it does. I think this opening box office is easily half as big without Hugh Jackman. That's not an exaggeration.
Yeah, because it's only getting that extra oomph because the people like us who pay attention to every single thing that they put out, that they tweet, that they post on social media.
Or even if you're just watching the first 2 Deadpool movies. I mean, yes, the more you see, the better. But even the movies, they kind of are like setting this up like it's coming down the pipeline one day.
But average audience goers are going to see, oh, there's a new MCU movie. I'm going to see that. That's kind of a given.
So, yeah, I think Jada swayed me. I don't know if it's justified, so she won me over there. And to her point, right? I mean, we're in spoiler section. We get a little taste of maybe somebody else bearing the adamantium.
Oh my God.
He cocks the arms and the claws come out and it's a cool moment.
Straight from down the street, according to Deadpool.
Those assholes down the street, Thanks, Henry Cavill. Yeah. That one got, I definitely, there was like 2 in this movie I just never would have called. That was one of them. Wow.
No, I purposely.
The cavalry, what was it? What they call them? The cavalry?
Cavalry. Yeah, no, I purposefully stopped getting on social media. I think whenever they premiered the movie in France, just because I'm on Twitter and the algorithm will literally pull up anything for me. So I stopped paying attention. I didn't.
You need to know this.
I only knew about Daphne Keane as X-23, and that's it.
That was technically in the last trailer.
Yeah, I saw that in the trailer.
I only knew some speculations, but I was like, people love to make stuff up all the time for clicks. So everything in the movie besides Daphne Keane, I was like,
and I guess that's my thing about it is on one hand, in the fiction, I think this was a huge waste of Hugh Jackman. The massive but, though, is this whole thing works because it's about the meta. And the fact that this is a Deadpool movie And because people like us are so plugged in to what's going on around the making of these movies, that's what makes it work.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so conflicted on, is it a good movie or not? I mean, not really.
I think that's what makes it work now. But like, as we mentioned, the shelf life,
I don't think it's going to hold up.
Because
I'm literally only going to watch it for the Wolverine scenes.
Because all of the jokes in it are also like very specific to this moment.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so they're going to be dated in 5 years. In 10 years, there's not, you know what I mean? They won't even have the same oomph that they have like right now in this present.
I kind of liken that effect for us in the way that, like, you know, for elementary school kids, at the end of the year, people with perfect attendance get to go to a pizza party, and everyone's like, oh, "Yeah, I got perfect attendance. I get to go to this pizza party." Oh, and then you go, and it's the best day of your life. And then you look back on it a few years later, and you're like, "Oh, they bought us like."
They exploited us.
Like,
they exploited
they
us.
bought us really
like I could have called in
pizza.
sick like 3 days a year, and I missed pizza that one time.
And just for what? For like, a little slice of pizza and this guy that I hate sitting next to. Like,
Exactly.
Now, I will say, and again, this is all fan service, there is something really cool to, you know, seeing the iconic Wolverine that we all know, because we haven't gotten a recasting yet, in so many iconic versions of the character. That montage at the beginning where it's like, I think that's the one you were alluding to earlier, Arthur, where it's like, I'm going to go find the Wolverine. And it's like, you get, and I'm not a comic book scholar, but like even the one of Wolverine on the cross on the skulls, I don't know what comic that's from.
Reference?
Oh, yeah.
I got it. It's Fever Dream. So it's a specific iteration of Wolverine where he's not really with the X-Men in that universe, but he is captured and tortured by this group named the Reavers. And they basically torture him for forever, put him on a giant cross with a bunch of skulls. It's a very, very popular comic cover. It's one of his most popular. And he basically is just out of his mind at that point, which is what they reference. I have all of the references listed.
I mean, like, you get that. Which, again, having not read the comic, I still recognize the cover. So that's just, you're like, whoa, they did that. The fact that I know we got Logan, which was loosely based on the comic Old Man Logan, but you get the actual, like, version of Old Man Logan in the movie where he's got the hat and the, you know. I mean, gosh, there was the one where he's got the eye patch.
Yeah, he's
you know?
called Patch. Yep.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, Jada, did you appreciate that stuff?
I really, just because I really love niche like Easter egg things. Like we saw like the Fantastic Car in the Void, which is like Fantastic Four's like vehicle that they've ridden. Every Marvel superhero has their own like vehicle at one point. They show the Milano from Guardians of the Galaxy. Obviously the 20th Century Fox logo. The one-handed Wolverine. I don't know if you guys saw the one with like the stump for a hand. That's the Age of Apocalypse Wolverine. So I don't know.
Is that black suit with red?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if you guys remember a little character called Apocalypse that was once played by the wonderful Oscar Isaac, and is you know, but we don't also talk about that one.
They also the orange suit that he was the brown suit that we've seen we even got the Hulk. Yeah, we did get the Hulk cameo in there too.
Yeah, and then fun fact about that, the Hulk cameo is actually an Easter egg. So Wolverine's very first ever appearance in the comics, Incredible Hulk issue number 180, that's back in like 1974, is literally, it's like the last panel, and it's a shot of Hulk in like his green and brown with like Wolverine being shown like through like the claws and stuff like that. It's that's like a really great like cool homage that I was not expecting to see, but it was like, oh my goodness.
So the fan service was thick.
No,
thicker than what I could glean from it. You know?
Well, I mean, they have it for everyone. It's like if you've watched the movies, they've got that. But like, and I'm watching it, and I know enough about comics to be like, I recognize this.
Yeah.
So if I had been a person who had been reading Wolverine comics for my whole life, I probably would have my mind blown.
Yeah, lots of really wonderful iconography in this.
Yeah.
I heard some people say that this movie is the equivalent of the Leonardo DiCaprio meme looking at the camera.
That's just the whole movie. Definitely that montage for sure. Oh, and we also got the I thought it was a good gag, the
comic accurate.
The comic accurate Wolverine height.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
I know I promise we're not just going to do this, go through all the cameos, but the reason I say that is it's like, does the story justify Hugh Jackman as Wolverine? I don't think so, but the meta nature of it makes it valuable right now. And it's like, if we again, if you ever wanted to see Hugh Jackman in any of those iterations, you got it in this movie, you know, which was pretty interesting. I guess last thing I'd say, like, and I guess this is my biggest criticism, you know, do we feel like this specific iteration brings something to the table that we haven't seen before? Because this is super sad Wolverine, which is basically Wolverine from the James Mangold movies, The Wolverine and Logan. And, you know, it's a very similar arc, even, I think.
The exact same arc that I would argue it's less of a, I would feel like the only difference between those two Wolverines is that Wolverine, the Wolverine and Logan, he outlives them all. And they have that, you know, sort of effect right there. And then the Wolverine and Deadpool and Wolverine, he is younger and just leaves one day and comes back to that. Like, I feel like they have the exact same.
I thought that was the weakest thing. I was expecting there to be.
I guess he's a coward. Like that's the new thing.
Or like, oh,
like I thought he like lashed out and accidentally killed them or something.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the way they were talking about how the horrible thing he did. And I was like,
oh,
oh,
the worst Wolverine, and all he did was go out for a drink. That doesn't sound right.
I also feel like, and again, this is me speculating. There's no evidence on the contrary. You have to remember this movie was filmed. Strikes did affect the making of this film. And I super suspect that there was supposed to be more actual X-Men in this movie somewhere. They even allude to it with a joke. They're like, oh, is it time for the third act flashback? You know, and then we never get it. So, you know, so I feel like there was something there that we didn't quite get to see to really add to that. But because on paper, it's like, okay, we've seen this. It's not even the saddest version of what has happened to him.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like it's more tragic in the Logan universe.
Oh yeah, oh definitely.
Sure. Yeah.
Or Professor X accidentally killed everyone.
Yeah.
What? Professor X is
okay, let's bring it back. So I think we're all on board of we love Hugh Jackman. I guess we enjoy this fan service, but pretty weak sauce material generally. What do you guys think about how this pays off the Deadpool character, though?
It doesn't.
Completely neuters his supporting cast.
Yeah.
I feel like they were just thrown as an afterthought. They're like, oh yeah, this is guys, this is a Deadpool movie. I guess we got to put him in here somewhere.
Yeah, it's they sort of advertise it as this like merging of universes, and then they don't. They specifically keep them apart at the very end, and they're like, "Oh, well, but the TVA can help you travel back and forth." And I'm like, "Well, then you shouldn't have told us that everything was going to be joined together." So,
right.
Yeah.
It's very confusing because I mean, and that's sort of nice segue to our next topic here in a moment. But I want to give everyone a chance to weigh in. But like, you're right. The movie is about the consolidation of the universes, but it also doesn't do that. It's weird. It doesn't. It's an incomplete thought, is what it feels like. I personally hated the last 15 minutes. Well, I hated the last set pieces where all the Deadpools show up.
Oh, the Deadpool Corps.
I was sitting here thinking, what? That's what I was like, what is even going on anymore? I don't even know. I honest to God don't know what function they serve in this. Like, I don't know who they are. I don't know what they're about. I don't know why they want to kill him. It was just very.
Look, Blake Lively needed a check.
So did Matthew McConaughey.
Oh man, wait, was McConaughey in there?
Yeah, Cowboy Pool. Yeah,
Didn't catch
One
it.
of his Wrexham boys was in there too. One of his football people.
Oh yeah,
He's Welsh Pool.
Was McElhaney one of the, or what's his name? Rob
McElhenney.
McElhaney.
They had to counter all the iterations of Wolverine with all the iterations.
and
of
then
Deadpool, just to make it
another
balance.
fun voice cameo. Nathan Fillion was Headpool.
I did catch that one.
Okay.
I did
Yeah.
catch that one. Yeah. I mean, see, it's cool.
Yeah, but that's what it is.
Yeah, again-
fan service. You
Okay,
saw it. You found it.
with my argument that I made earlier about unlisted supporting characters, the Deadpool Corps is the one that I will be like, no, those are just gratuitous cameos. Like, they're not like Nick Cage in The Flash bad, but it's also like,
Yeah.
Well, and it didn't, I just don't feel like they actually, again, his whole arc at the beginning of this movie, which again, this should serve as a follow-up to the last movie, and it definitely is not. But the arc of this movie is, I want to matter. Okay?
yeah.
And what does that mean? We don't explore what that means at all. And it just ends with him fighting a bunch of Deadpools, fighting himself, and
I attempted
And
to
by the way,
sacrifice.
by the way, that's the sequence that could have been cut both from a plot pacing perspective, but also it was the most frustrating action scene because I could tell they were trying something with the tracking shot, but it just did not work.
They wanted to do an Old Boy reference, I feel like.
Yeah.
I didn't even catch that, but I can see that.
Just the slow dolly to the side, it just screamed Old Boy.
Again, cool idea, and that would have been fine if it actually looked as good as Old Boy. That was my biggest problem with it,
in broad daylight, out in the middle of the city, like you kind of shot yourself in the foot with that setup.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm with you, Jada. I don't think this in any way meaningfully pays off any idea for Deadpool in this movie or from the previous movies. Laron, any thoughts on that?
It just feels, it's just another excuse to have them here to riff off of each other. That's why I said this only works for me as a comedy. It doesn't work for me as an MCU movie. It doesn't work for me as a comic book movie. It just works like you have these characters. It's almost, it's basically an R-rated SNL skit with all of your favorite characters together playing kind of a goofier version of their own characters together. And that's what it kind of feels like. And on that kind of like base level, it's enjoyable, but it doesn't actually move the needle in any way for me. So no.
Yeah, Arthur, you gonna change our minds?
No. I support everything at this table.
So bad Deadpool. So it's a bad Deadpool movie because Deadpool himself doesn't. I guess as a if you look at it as a comedy, but even comedies, your characters have.
True. There's stakes.
There's stakes of some
There's
sort.
There's bigger stakes than I want to matter.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know. Okay.
It's true.
Well, the movie is about consolidation. And again, as Jada pointed out, the universes fail to consolidate at the end of the movie. This is supposed to be, I think, a send-off of the pre-MCU era of the Marvel movies that started with Blade in 1998. And they use the fourth wall breaking jokes, cameos, and of course the inclusion of Wolverine as the co-lead to make the movie about. It's all coming together. That thing that you knew, it's dead. We're going to cherry pick what works and put it in the new one. Okay.
And some things that never worked, never saw the light of day.
Exactly.
Gambit.
It was great.
Well, we got it for a second, guys.
Yeah.
We flew too close to the sun.
I guess, in terms of how well does this film actually explore that idea overall? I mean, I've already kind of shown my hand. I think the ending totally flubs it. But do you guys think, what do you think about how the film is also about the thing it's doing?
As a comedy, again, I feel like it skewers the whole enterprise very well. I feel like there's a lot of that. I don't know who that's for specifically, except like you said, diehard purists and people who have been following the news and every aspect of all these things happening at once. But I mean, because it just feels like even the studios are getting a laugh into it, and it's kind of like, okay, this is fun for now, but what are we doing with this property, guys? Like, what are we like? It's great that we can all have a laugh that everything sucks and some things didn't work out and some things did because we paid them to do it in this one scene or this one sequence. But I just don't know the longevity of that and how you springboard from this and how you stitch together another meaningful, continuation of these stories that are being kind of just loosely cooked here. So I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like the only sort of like, oh yeah, this is a part of the larger MCU. You'll see Deadpool again is the little clip at the TVA where they show Thor crying over Deadpool, which is obviously going to be in like Secret Wars or something like that.
If that even pays, I actually wouldn't be surprised if that never pays off.
Yeah, it's like
that's where you use footage from Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's like, I'm pretty sure that's like Thor: The Dark World, like Chris Hemsworth. But I feel like they tried to sort of make that sort of like, oh, if you look out for this, you'll see him. And yeah, it's probably gonna be on the like Eternals celestial sticking out of the ocean type thing where it's like 5 years later, why haven't we addressed that? Like what are we doing? I feel like they just wanted to I feel like Ryan Reynolds was just like, okay, I'm a part of the MCU now, give me a movie. And they just kind of had to like, okay, check the box.
Yeah.
That way we know all these characters are here now and it's not really serving anything of a larger purpose other than to like wrap up the like Fox stuff and then just kind of shoo it away until they want to do their own iterations of it.
Is this a palate cleanser, guys, before the big springboard, or is this actually
A palate cleanser of Pop Rocks?
Well, Laron, in a different world where I didn't know what the next 3 movies were, I would say it could be, but I know that the next movie is Captain America, New World Order,
Brave New World.
Brave New World.
Brave New World.
Well, they
thank you.
changed the title like 5 times. It's not your fault.
So it was that at one point.
It
right?
was New World.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they
Okay.
switched
So Brave New World. The Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
And then what's the other one?
Fantastic Four.
Fantastic.
Four.
Well, okay. Fantastic Four is the one I feel like
I'm
could be.
so stoked for that movie.
Yeah. The other two feel like
there's
they're.
potential there?
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they fucked it up before, so
Yeah.
now it's like here's an opportunity to do this right.
Well, and the reason they effed it up before was because it was in a different regime where I just the creatives behind it were not Kevin Feige. They were not people who really appreciated the comic book material. Because again, at the time, comic books were dumb. Like
Yeah.
they were for kids.
They were banned on the sets of the earlier Fox movies. And
Yes.
Kevin Feige, who was working on those films at the time, but just as like an assistant, would go around and sneak comics to the actors, which is fantastic. And that's why I love Kevin Feige so much.
It's fun.
Yeah. Cameos. All right, let's talk about them. I have to say, if nothing else, I will say I was laughing to tears whenever Chris Evans jumped up in the air and screamed "Flame on," because the way they shot it, that was one of the times where I was like, that was some really good filmmaking.
It was great.
Because they set it up with, who's the guy under the thing, and then they reveal, and you're like, you reveal it's Chris Evans, and you're like, and before you even process the possibilities of Chris Evans, he's jumping in the air, and you're like, he's gonna say it, and you're like, I know what he's gonna say, and then even though it's obvious, his hair's cut,
Yeah.
then he does the flame on joke. I died.
yes.
It's a good bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the great
Well executed.
ways of subverting expectations because, it's the MCU. Everyone knows Chris is Cap now. Not really a lot of people have known him as Johnny Storm since the early aughts.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, we got Cap back for a little bit. And then he does the thing.
And even in that costuming, like that post-apocalyptic garb, like it has like shades of red and then the blue under.
Yes.
So like, okay,
Yeah.
it's post-apocalyptic Cap.
Yeah, it's some variant of Captain America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that bit works.
I actually find his scene in the post-credit scene really funny.
Oh my god.
That was hilarious.
Oh yeah.
What is it? Is it gargling juggernauts? Immediately followed by the Walt Disney logo.
Yeah.
Was the just most surreal moment.
I feel like that must have been really cathartic for Chris Evans because he's had to be
Yeah.
like the cookie cutter, like
Yeah.
Boy Scout, like, rah America person for
Yep.
the last like 10, 12 years. And now he's finally getting to be loud, dirty mouth Johnny Storm again.
Okay, so we'll go down the list here in a second, but like let's just talk about our favorite ones and what worked for us. You already mentioned Gambit. That was one of the ones I never could have called.
Gambit, yeah.
I
Never in a million
never-
years did I think.
It's such a deep cut.
Yeah.
It's such a deep cut, but it works for us because I think we all know that movie he was trying so hard to get that movie made before Disney killed it.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know that, they're just like, Channing Tatum's here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I have 2 reasons why I really, really love Channing Tatum as Gambit in this film. First one, I mean, like you said, I never in a billion years expected to see him come out in a comic accurate costume
With that accent.
with, oh my gosh. Second thing is
Who's your dialect coach?
who's the Minions. I love the gag that they did with it because the most important thing about Gambit is that he's Cajun.
Yes.
He's a Cajun man. And Channing Tatum is very much not Cajun.
Right.
And for the longest time while he was going through development hell trying to get this off the ground, I was like, I don't know if he can pull off a Cajun accent. And then they play off of that in this film by making most of his dialogue unintelligible.
It's very
just like
incredible.
the worst Cajun accent I've ever heard in my life, which was so funny. And I loved seeing the Gambit power sequence, live action sequences. It was just like a dream come true for me. Like I've wanted him in the X-Men films since super early on. So it was just really, especially after reigniting my love for him with X-Men 97, I just really loved watching him fight in Scott Lang's Skull.
Yes.
That was just really fun.
It felt like it gave us everything that we wanted from other films,
Right.
without actually being like a necessarily impactful or meaningful film of itself.
And
right?
also the meta commentary that he was like, "Oh well, I've been born here. I've never really existed in the first place."
Yeah.
Just like just like the movie that
They
you were
killed me.
supposed to be.
What was it? It was something like they killed me before I was sperm out of my daddy's dick or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's the good meta commentary that I like really enjoy.
Yes.
Yeah.
all right, Laron. I know you got to say it.
Well, so Gambit actually was my biggest one. I mean, but I will say that yes, I mean the thing that actually made me actually like have a seizure in my seat was seeing Wesley Snipes come back as Blade, because I have been defending people. I'm like, you look, X-Men, Blade, and then if we go over to DCU, Batman. Those are the characters I will watch any iteration of. I don't care, so to see them in this universe is just bananas to me, because those seem like properties that would just never merge, and so it's just so exciting and unexpected to see that
With that haircut.
it's almost like it's also I can maybe if I just adjust it a little bit, it's like
fade
yes,
or- yeah.
exactly.
This is sort of a segue to a thing I want to talk about before we talk about a couple of the other cameos. But how much? I mean, I know Kevin Feige is the producer, but man, there was, and I know there's some playful pot shots in here, but the one that I was like, how did this get in this movie? Was Wesley Snipes saying, "I'm the only.
There's only going to be one blade." Yeah.
Yeah, I would, and just because we all know what's going on with the Mahershala movie, it's like, oh my god,
Yeah.
Mahershala is probably calling up Kevin like, what the fuck?
I
is
think
going
they
on?
allowed
It's not
that
funny, guys.
because they then tilt down to Deadpool, who's looking
Yes,
at the
who goes
screen
to-
like he doesn't know.
Yeah. Are
That
you going
kind
to tell
of-
him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's because there's a wordless negation to it, is why the studio was probably a bit more lenient on that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because like it was like that's the kind of stuff where it's like you're making fun of management
Yeah.
in the movie, like in the most about your current failure.
yeah.
The satire works, guys. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but even get to see him with his little blade spinning. I don't care what you call it, but yeah, you get to use that in the fight scene. Ah, man,
And he says motherfucker like 40 times. So
yeah. And the fact, by the way, the fact that this was these were meaty cameos. Like they actually had full blown. They were in a like I wouldn't say full act, but they were in like probably 20 minutes of the movie. Roughly.
They actually got a scene.
Yeah.
I was fearful that when we and we haven't mentioned Electra, Jennifer Gardner.
Also get some good jokes.
When
in there.
all
Dissing
those
Ben Affleck.
that for me
That was great.
That got the biggest laugh from me. I thought that was funnier than anyone in the room. But yes, it's fine.
like,
He's
well-
dead. It's fine. It's fine.
Yes.
I love it. But yeah, like seeing them together, I thought that was all we're gonna get of them. Is like, and honestly, that might have been enough for me just to get the rush of like, oh, it was so nice to see them. But to actually give them a scene was good. How good of a scene it was, I don't know, but we got a scene still. So
I honestly need to watch that scene again, because I was in such shock that all those people were in the same room in a movie on the big screen that I wasn't really listening to what they were saying outside of the quips.
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
I did also love the good joke about Johnny Storm. They're like, "Oh, we love Johnny. He's so great, man. Yeah, we hope he comes back."
I bet he's thriving wherever he is. Oh my goodness.
That was a good bit.
Can we also talk about how Tyler Mann was Sabretooth in this movie?
Yeah.
And not Liev
Liev.
Schreiber?
Yeah,
That's insane.
Yeah.
that's a little wild.
I
loved it.
I kind of like that.
Oh,
I
you
mean,
liked it?
all respect to Leave, but
I mean, it was probably one of my favorite cameos was Tyler Mann. And it's so much just
No, that one's a cameo.
X and X2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
He showed
Yeah.
up to die. That's
Yeah.
it.
I was really
Toad-
sad.
Was that Ray Park as Toad?
I couldn't tell because Vinnie
think
Jones is
so.
not Juggernaut. I know that.
Yes.
No.
yes.
Which was
No.
Surprising.
that was one of those moments like, why did you bring
Juggernaut.
that in if you're not going to have Vinny
Yeah.
do it?
Maybe they ran out of money.
We
They-
also had the Russian from Punisher, of all people,
Yeah.
in this film.
okay.
And
I was like, what?
Azazel? Is that
Azazel,
Yeah,
Azazel from
Azazel.
First Class?
Deathstrike from X2 was in
Yeah.
there
It's an
too.
extreme wide shot. You can see her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Never close ups though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, of course, Pyro, like,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was a good bit.
beloved.
I love that. Yeah.
He's great. He was cool.
Of course, Pyro worked his way into second in command here.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that they've kept his character consistent
Yeah.
from X3, where he's just a Weasley little like guy who will talk his way into any.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, great inclusions. Do we think these cameos actually service the story in any way though?
I have so the big thesis that Jennifer Garner or maybe Blade or all of them, is I finally get my ending, and then they don't at all.
No.
Maybe
We don't even see them end. We
Right.
see them looking at, we see them watching Wolverine.
Wyatt, yeah.
Yeah, like,
jumping.
what happened? Like, are they
But
still there?
Laura gets out.
Oh, we haven't even talked about Daphne Keene.
Oh yeah. We
Oh,
probably
my
should.
X-23 is there.
Yeah,
And X-23.
and X-23 shows up.
X-23.
Yeah, okay. We should probably talk about that one for a second because it does tie into some of the more dramatic material in the movie.
Yeah.
That scene between between X-23 and Wolverine by the fire was, and again, it's not the script.
Yeah.
No.
It's just bringing my love for Logan to that scene, and then
After all this ridiculousness
Right.
around
Mhm.
and you see, obviously she got teleported into the nowhere void,
yeah.
but she lived a life for a time apparently, and she was able to kind of help encourage him. And such a dumb thing when he started we haven't talked about the suit either, but like when she's like, I like your suit, and he's like, hate this suit, and Scott used to make me what, and like but then he starts crying because they're all dead, and he's like, the only reason I wear it's because it's the last thing I have left of the team.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And I think it's just Hugh Jackman.
It got me.
It got me good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Daphne Keene.
And that line, she was like, you
You were always the wrong
you were
guy.
always the wrong person. Something.
Yeah.
But what was the follow up? It's like you.
So was
you
he?
you showed up, or I don't know. Yeah, something.
No, she just walks off
That's
after
right.
that.
Okay.
I think it's different in the trailer, though.
Yeah, because
It's a different cut in
in
the trailer.
movie, he's like, I'm not the person you're looking for. You got the wrong guy. And then she turns around and she says, you were always the wrong guy. And then she walks off and leaves him to like think on it.
Mhm.
Just like,
That was that actually had an impact. That
Yeah.
line, that line. But I think it's because I'm thinking of another movie. You know,
Yeah.
like-
I think the line that
another
you're thinking,
storyline.
I think
Totally.
the line you're thinking of is By the Fire, where she's like, yeah, you're not like the greatest like support system, but you always show up
Yeah,
when,
yeah,
when it
yeah. I'm
matters.
conflating those.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, so again, thematically though, I don't know. So you raised a good point, Arthur. Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Mhm.
I think actually does give some closure to especially the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, but also kind of the Tobey Maguire. We get
Yes.
we get a little coda to those characters that we never got in those movies. I'll be honest. Were any of us wondering what happened to Elektra? I mean, Blade
Maybe, yes.
Well, okay,
Blade, yes.
okay, but Blade's ending is he just rides off into the mystery, and that's kind of a cool ending for him too. Like I don't think they got an ending, and
I think all their arcs are as big as Deadpool's. You know what I mean? In
Yeah.
terms
Yeah.
of it's something. It's literally a line that's set offhand, and then that's the whole thing, and it's really just about their presence here.
And it's also a kind of, I don't know, Jennifer Garner coming in was kind of a like, whoa for me, because I've watched every single Marvel show. That includes Netflix's Daredevil, which has an Elektra character in there. And so that kind of watching Elektra in that show for a few seasons and then Marvel's Defenders, I kind of wrote Jennifer Garner out of my head for a bit, just because I'd been with Netflix's, now Disney Plus's, Elektra for years, and now I'm just kind of, and then I was
she's
like,
been doing evangelical movies now.
yeah, and now I'm like, oh, I forgot she was Elektra. Oh, okay, yeah, all right.
how could you forget?
Yeah.
That
Listen,
The Evanescence song? Really? How could your heart be so cold? It's like,
Okay, so I guess that leads me to my conclusion. If we don't think that it adds anything thematically, it just I feel now even more validated in saying that this movie is hogwash. There's like literally nothing here. I was
gosh.
hoping we would find the answer to the
nugget.
cameos in here,
Listen.
and it just
if you want someone to vouch for the cameos, I will.
they're great cameos. I'm just saying.
I'll be the fall guy.
All right, sure.
So I don't know. I kind of want to go back onto what I said earlier about like supporting unannounced supporting characters, because like, I mean, yeah, the like henchman for Cassandra Nova, who's like made up of all of people that we've seen before. Those can be argued as gratuitous just because they kind of show up and they're meant to be henchmen. They're not really Pyro. I feel like was kind of a little bit, they gave him a little bit more to do than just a gratuitous, oh, I'm going to show up and be just the villain for the villain. X-23, I feel like was really good. She was kind of the emotional guide that Wolverine needed, even if he didn't have an X-23 in his universe. I'm very biased, so I love Gambit. And Nice Pool. Didn't need Nice Pool in this movie. No, did not need him.
All the extra Deadpools. None
Yeah,
of them.
all the extra Deadpools. Even though I love Dogpool and I love how they all love Dogpool and they're like, oh my God, yeah. Also, to answer your first question, I feel like you are the Peter to his Deadpool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I dig that.
Because you don't have enough rage to be Wolverine.
That's very
you
true.
are a very
Does that make
serene,
Arthur Wolverine?
calm person.
Craig might say it differently.
Well,
But
he came in hot with his spoiler-free reviews, so or came in cold, as Laron said.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like for some, I think that Chris Evans was a great cameo, just because a great supporting character, because his character served a purpose. He introduced the villain to us. He led the characters where they needed to go. He wasn't just gonna show up. Oh, flame on! Off into space. I feel like there's a few where it's like you could debate as to whether or not they're gratuitous or not.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're not all immediately write-offs is what makes me so like passionate about it.
Yeah.
Happy Hogan.
That
Where
is
are we at?
That is a cameo. That's definitely a cameo.
Yeah, it's a cameo. But for as weak of a storyline as Wade Wilson does, it does kind of lead him into because he straight up is like, yeah, like you do stuff, but not at the level that the Avengers need. Like he basically just straight up tells him, you're kind of mediocre for us right now. Like you got to step your game up, which I mean is kind of a kick to the balls. But
listen, we're not even going to go down this rabbit hole. But it doesn't. How does he get to the sacred timeline the first time? We don't know. Doesn't matter.
Nobody knows.
We're not going to address how convoluted the X-Men timeline is. Like, as if the X-Men timeline is one timeline anyway.
Truly, that's not even something we need to get into.
No. I'm just noting that because if you think about stuff like that for more than 2 seconds, it's like, wait, he decided he wanted to join how did he get to that timeline that apparently he forgot about later? I don't know. It's strange. Well, anything else anyone else wants to say? I do agree with you, by the way. I want to be very clear.
Yeah.
I think if they got a lot out of the characters they brought, they did feel more support. It wasn't just a one scene blip in, blip out.
Yeah.
I guess mostly I'm thinking more like thematically, narratively. I don't know that they're really doing anything particularly impactful. I don't think, again, it doesn't ruin the movie because it's fun, but okay. Any other thoughts on cameos before we move on to our last subtopic here?
I just want to say this is there was a line in the movie. It's kind of an industry insider joke where I think it's right after they get into the void and then they're like surrounded by like Pyro's henchmen and Cassandra Nova's henchmen. And one of the guys is like screaming about how he's gonna kill Wolverine or kill Deadpool or something, and Deadpool's like, "Oh, death by day player," and he's the only person in my theater that laughed at that.
I thought that was I laughed.
Yeah, it was
good.
on set.
Yeah, no, because I was like, because a lot of people don't really know what a day player is, like in context of working in film.
In film,
and so I kind of laughed, and everyone gave me a little bit of a look, but I was like, it's a lot of inside baseball in this film.
Yeah,
totally, on a lot of different levels. All right. Well, let's just talk briefly. Because we could be here all night talking about the future of the MCU. Again, because I think one of the things that was appealing about this movie was this is really the first time we're going to get a meaningful inclusion of X-Men characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I do think this movie also carried a bit of an expectation that this film would push that forward. If Hugh Jackman's here, clearly they must know what's coming next. So what's the next going to look like? And, I blame Kevin Feige for this a little bit because on the press tour, he was even talking about how significant this film was going to be in terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Mm-hmm. He said if Endgame's a 10, this is an 8, so you're like, oh, this is going to be some pretty big stuff's going to happen. Do you guys think this moves the needle for the MCU in any way?
I feel like it could be in the future. Once we look back on it, because you could argue the same thing for phase 1. For all of those first movies, they were their own solo stories, and then they had a little stinger at the very end, and then they all came together seamlessly in the first Avengers, and we were like, oh, they all connected together because of this, and this. I feel like it's not going to go that smoothly this time around, but I don't know. I'm kind of holding off on judgment for that until later on, just because I don't want to put all my eggs in my basket. I want to manage my expectations a bit.
Sure.
I think to Jada's point, so I liken it to this. When I was a teen and like super into Harry Potter, I was like waiting for the next books, very into it. I remember they would sell these like unlicensed like fan guides, like what's going to happen in the, like something you don't see anymore. But I remember reading one of those, like there was a quote from Rowling saying like there was something in the Chamber of Secrets that was going to be heavily influential to how that series played out. And in hindsight, it's understanding it's the Horcruxes.
Right.
That's never spelled out there, but that's what it is.
Right.
So I think Jay's point, maybe in 5 years, we look back on this and see how we got to Disney's Avengers versus Fox's Marvel Knights. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But in the moment, I'm not sure where it takes us.
Because even for like the Infinity Saga, like just as a whole, they didn't focus on the Infinity Stones at all until you got to, what was it, Doctor Strange? Or was
they
it
had
early?
appeared in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians, yeah.
Is Dark World the first?
Dark World also has an
Yeah.
appearance of one. Yeah.
But they're very,
Yeah, and they weren't
fleeting,
straight up being like, "Oh, this is an Infinity Stone. It's
Yeah.
going to be really important to learn for later on."
Well, I
even-
also think some of that is Feige. They're really good at. I think they're really good at honing in on what people like about or don't like about something. Like Thor: The Dark World was panned. People thought that was, and then they were able to be like, "Oh no, actually, you see, it was very important this whole time."
Yeah.
They're really
Pivot.
good about doing that.
Yeah.
I think. Laron, what do you think?
I feel like I've had my gumbo, my MCU gumbo, and that was Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, give me another gumbo, I'm gonna eat it, but is it gonna taste as good? I don't know. So I'm kind of in the like, I'll wait and see. I'm not optimistic, but I think that I feel like it's going to be a messier version of what we've seen before. So
Yeah. I guess it's, to be fair, I shouldn't jump to conclusions. I'm feeling a strong no, but there is, if they do bring Cassandra Nova back, for example,
Yeah.
that it could be like, this is the origin movie for her. I don't think they're going to do that, but they could, maybe there's some rules introduced in this movie that end up being really important in Secret Wars, perhaps. But at the moment, it really didn't feel that way. So
I'm more interested in individual properties that are coming out than I am about how they're all going to interconnect.
Right.
I'm less interested in the
Same.
convergence as I am just seeing certain characters we haven't seen yet on screen. So,
well, you say that, and I do tend to agree. Fantastic Four and Blade are pretty, and whenever they announce the X-Men, but here's the reality, Laron. Here's the real thing: is we're not going to get the X-Men, the MCU, until after Secret Wars. I'm calling that right now. So let's talk more about what we think the MCU is going to do next. And hey, the timing of this podcast recording is perfect. We're recording it a day or two after Comic-Con, or the day after Comic-Con in San Diego wrapped up. And hey, there was some major news. The big one being that officially, actually, hold on. Let me present it as the Russo brothers did. They were so fatigued. They gave it all they had. It was all on the table. They were never going to do another Avengers again. But after some time away and thinking and soul searching, they have found a path forward. We are inspired to tell the Secret Wars story that definitely was announced when we weren't attached to it. But we couldn't tell Secret Wars before we tell another story we've always wanted to tell. Doomsday. Definitely not replacing the Kang Dynasty. Anyway, I just thought that whole presentation reeked of corporate
yes.
PR. So hard.
I'm like, you
We
guys
figured
just
it
love
out,
being
guys.
babied on these Marvel
This
stuff,
was on-
didn't you?
It was in our hearts the whole time. We always knew we were going to come back. No. So Robert Downey Jr. Announced is going to be returning to play Dr. Doom in a very shocking turn of events. And the Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, directed by the Russo brothers. So with all that said, there are more cards on the table than we had even a week ago. What would you guys like to see out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe next? Laron, it sounds like for you more, it's just stronger individual films.
Stronger individial films. I look, I'm holding out for that Mahershala Ali Blade. That is
Seriously.
I'm so excited for that. If it ever happens, I know that they're saying, like, they're still nodding at it. It's moving forward. I remember it was kind of in shambles there for a minute, but also just less about the actual films themselves, but just the tone of these films. What I do think that Deadpool and Wolverine kind of presents again as them taking risks. You know what I mean? Like that's what I want to see more of moving forward. Like this iteration.
And by taking risks, you're talking about the hard R, super vulgar.
I'm talking
comedy.
about being able, not necessarily it having to be hard R, but basically taking some creative risks, taking some like adding some auteurs and actually letting them be auteurs. You know, let those films have more. You know what I mean? Like actually have a distinct style that they where it feels like this is this director's version of this thing. You know, like we've seen that happen with the Star Wars franchise.
If in this case, if the auteur is Ryan Reynolds, not Shawn Levy, by the way, just going to
because if you think about every iteration, like even things like what the Harry Potter series, like those some of those movies are different versions of them are distinctly different because of the filmmaker that made that version. It might be someone's favorite. Right. A lot of people's favorite, and that is Alfonso Cuarón's the third one. So it's like that's what I'm saying. It's like that franchise figured that out. That we got to mix it up because if we have Chris Columbus the whole way through, it's not gonna. You know what I mean? It's gonna teeter out, and so we got to keep things fresh. And I think that those are ways that it could, just tonally, like mixing things up in that regard.
And bringing the Russos back is definitely evidence that they're going to be doing that. Right.
Right.
I'm sorry, like such a hater. Because I agree with you. I would like to see more fresh takes, more new voices doing kind of off the wall stuff. I mean, whenever this Blade movie comes out, I hope it's way different than anything we've seen from them before.
Sure.
Kind of like Werewolf by Night was when that came out. Anyway, it's
even Ryan Coogler for the first. I mean, both. I guess both of them, but especially the first one.
Yeah.
Especially the first one. That was one of the few times where I was like, I actually saw some of his you know what I mean, like his distinct voice in it, where it felt like the most ethnic, you know what I mean, like superhero movie we've ever seen. And so like that is kind of what I'd like to see, is just them taking risks that way, so that it doesn't all feel like a formula warmed over with the same, you know what I mean, like just mix it up.
That's what I hope happens. I
don't know if that's what's going to happen. That's what I would like to see.
Based on Comic-Con this last weekend, that I'm feeling like that's not what's going to happen, but we'll see. Arthur, what about you?
I mean, Laron's preaching the gospel. For me, it is forever and a day. Just give us some standalone stories. Just give us some things that we don't have to do homework on. We don't have to know all of the behind the scenes and all of the deep cuts, and just tell us, tell a good story. You can do team ups too, but they don't have to build up over 20 movies. Annihilus is here. Okay, Reed Richards calls Iron Man. I don't know, and they team up. There it is. But then the Fantastic Four can go fight Blastar for 90 minutes. Like you can do both things.
Yeah.
I can get Mephisto and the Midnight Suns, and I can get the Nico Minoru standalone fighting witchcraft movie. There's a way you could do both of those things without sacrificing or putting everything into the machine to feed this thing that may or may not pair off.
A story within a story, like a smaller story within that bigger thing. Yeah, that'd be nicer. Yeah,
I mentioned it off air, but going back this week and rewatching X-Men and X-Men 2, the simplicity, obviously they're leading into sequels,
right?
But not what this is.
It's a complete story on its own.
Yeah, and that's why I like Guardians so much. I think Guardians as a trilogy holds its own without a context of the MCU.
Absolutely. I think that's probably one of, if not the only series in the MCU that's like, if you just watch those three movies, you've got a beginning, middle, and end, complete character arcs, character story, with the exception of the weird Gamora swap in the
that kind of put a wrench in things.
Yeah, but otherwise, Jada, what about you? What do you want to see?
I said this before we started. I have been waiting my entire life for a really great Fantastic Four film. They are my favorite characters. I've always loved Marvel's first family. Even Herbie, their little robot. That's how I got into Spider-Man, is because I'm a big Spider-Man fan, is because one of Spider-Man's earliest shows in comics is that he goes to the Fantastic Four. He goes to the Baxter Building and is like, I want to join the Fantastic Four. And they're like, go away, kid. Which is really great. I love that dynamic. I love, I'm also a very big sci-fi person. It is probably some of the most sci-fi-ish that Marvel can get without getting into space itself, like getting into, the Guardians territory and things like that. I also really love Galactus. Galactus is going to be the big villain in that movie. He's great. And we get Silver Surfer too. I unironically love the early 2000s Fantastic Four films solely because That's all that I had visually to reference if I wasn't reading a comic book.
Yeah.
They're they're surface level, really fun movies, very bad when you think about them as like movies, and horrible representations of Doctor Doom. But
and Galactus.
yeah. But also, let's just real quick, they specifically say that Robert Downey Jr. is Doctor Doom. They don't say he is Victor Von Doom. So they could be doing a what if comic.
I thought they did at the panel.
No, they said he's Doctor Doom.
Yeah,
they've only
Dr.
named him as
Doom.
Doctor Doom. They've never said he's Victor Von Doom.
Okay.
And there is a what if comic that they might be pulling from that makes me like not entirely like, what the fuck are you doing?
I don't know though, because do you think that? I feel like using RDJ means that they're going to have to do a non-traditional Doctor Doom take.
Yeah.
Which is my same problem I have with like on the other side of the pond, like Superman and Lex Luthor. I'm like, they haven't gotten it right. Just stick to the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been done right.
Yeah.
Like just do that.
Hey, have you watched Superman and Lois?
Well, sorry, on the big screen.
On the big screen.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's a really great. But
Right.
yes, I agree.
I'm a Smallville stand for so anyway, yeah, on the big screen, I should say. And I'm worried that it's going to be like a Tony Stark variant, some sort of thing, and it's like I just don't know. Doctor Doom is such a rich bag. He's honestly he's up there with Magneto in terms of like best baddies of all time.
Yeah,
and it seems like I don't know. I'm curious to see what they cook up, but the casting makes me nervous. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel like I feel like everyone, regardless of how they feel about Marvel, they all kind of went like, oh, okay. Because like you said earlier, up until now, Marvel's never really missed when it comes to casting things. And this is the first time that all of us are like, giant question.
I mean, there's so many amazing choices they have.
Yeah, especially
John Malkovich,
Hugh
Grant. I mean, gosh, Stanley Tucci. Like it's just like there are options, like A+ options out there.
And even on the opposite spectrum, what Marvel did best early on was they got unknown actors or actors that weren't really in their prime and got them into these roles and had them grow into them. And it feels like we're kind of falling away from that a bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, just to echo what they were saying, I really hope the Fantastic Four, to combine what you're both saying, I really hope they just focus on making a great standalone Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah.
I'm a little more nervous about that now that they've announced Doomsday as the next Avengers, which means inevitably whatever happens in Fantastic Four is in some way going to tie or set up Doomsday.
Yeah.
But they have a great cast. I mean, Pedro Pascal was an interesting choice, but I'm here for it. So I'm optimistic about that, and I'm optimistic about the Blade movie. I think if they get it right, it'll have been worth the wait.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the biggest thing. I'm glad they're not rushing it through production like they could have. And lastly, I just want a good X-Men movie.
Yeah.
I'm like you're saying, Arthur, I don't need, like, keep it simple, keep it self-contained. And the X-Men have always kind of existed in their own little corner of the universe anyway.
Yeah.
So just make a great team up. And I am ready to see some fresh, as much as I love Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and Patrick Stewart as Professor X, I am ready to see new faces on those iconic characters. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. And speaking of X-Men, I am really wanting, they haven't said anything really along the lines of what I'm wanting, but I would really love for Marvel to expand on their animated shows, their animated media, their animated properties. They have like Marvel Entertainment with like all of their shows they do on like network cable and stuff like that. But I'm talking like Marvel Studios, like X-Men 97. I want more of that.
Yeah.
If I could get a show every once in a while of just like really great, like
make it standalone like X-Men 97 too.
A really great standalone show, fantastic writing. I would devour all of it with no problem.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we have said a lot about Deadpool and Wolverine. Any other closing thoughts? All right. Well, hey, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Arthur Gordon, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you and the things you're doing on the internet?
You can head over to goodtrashmedia.com. You can find us on Instagram at goodtrashmedia. You can just search Good Trash Genre Cast wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can find me on Letterboxd at the Arthur Gordon.
Very nice. And you guys just wrapped up part of your summer season. It was your top lists, right? You're doing like rankings, right?
Yeah, July we just ended our summer of the list, and so we did our top 10 action movies, top 5 film aesthetics, top 10 international films, something else. I don't remember. And in August, we're going to be doing our second part of Always Be Watching Denzel.
All right.
So you're Denzel all month. It'd be a good time.
Yeah.
Great way to get hyped up for Gladiator 2.
You know
I'm
it.
saying it.
Ooh.
Jada, where can people follow you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter because that's what it's called at Merritt_Jada. You can also follow me on Instagram at j.merritt with 2 R's, 3 T's. You can also find me probably standing outside at a lawn screaming at the sky.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for taking a break from Screaming at the Sky to come talk on the podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Happy to be here.
And Laron Chapman.
You can follow me at thecinematropolis.com for more episodes here, and also my review column, Real Insights with Laron Chapman. So yeah.
Get them real insights. That's what I say. Of course, all the Cinematropolis social media channels, Instagram. We're still on X, Twitter. Technically, we don't use it very often, but it provides there on Facebook. And of course, you can find me on all the social media channels at C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk, Letterboxd, Instagram. Yeah, there's the big ones. All right. Well, listeners, thanks so much for joining us today. We'll catch you again in 2 weeks when we return. We're going to do another doubleheader episode. We haven't done that in a while. We're going to be covering both Trap and Cuckoo. Until then.